Well, hi everybody, I'm Jo and it's great to be with you in this way. I'm sorry that we can't be together in person. If I'm honest, I like meeting people, being with people, being around people. But I'm glad that we have this because it's still better than nothing. It's still meaningful. It's still an opportunity to connect, even though virtual has meant something in our lives that we never expected. I wonder how you are navigating this time right now. I am in my office in the basement of our house. My kids, I have two teenage girls, are upstairs doing online school. My husband is upstairs in our spare room, which has now become his office, doing Zoom meetings all day long. And we have a dog in our house, a dog who is just wondering why the humans are still here and won't leave him alone. He is sick of the walks, friends. He's sick of the walks. Our world has changed, hasn't it? It's kind of strange. There are certain things I've tried to keep to standard. I am wearing jeans, aka hard pants, as I've heard other people call it, just for the accountability, because one of the unexpected things of this chapter of our lives, or at least mine, is the incessant need for snacking. And this is just to remind me that this season also has power to give me unintended consequences on that as well. But snacks aside, or at least snacks to the side, no shame in your game if you have snacks with you. How are you doing in this time? How are you navigating this unknown, this new normal, another phrase that we probably all want to get rid of, this unfolding reality? How's it going for you? I wonder whether your time has been marked by great loss, whether it's the loss of a loved one. And if that is the case, I'm so sorry for the loss that you're encountering. Maybe it's a different kind of loss, the loss of job, or someone in your family, or you have lost your job or you're on furlough. And again, I'm so sorry for the loss that you're encountering. Or maybe, as it is for all of us, it's the loss of the way that we used to do things, the things we could predict, the way we'd spend our time, the way we'd gather together. And again, for all of us, I'm so sorry for our loss. It's important to name our grief, to name the losses that we experience, to name what those things are. For some of us, honestly, we love having our kids home, but at the same time, we feel this pressure because we feel we're not doing anything well right now. We've realized quite how much we really love the school system because we're not getting to enjoy it in the way that we used to. We are navigating kids who are disappointed because they don't have a prom and they won't walk the stage and for graduation, or we're helping a kid navigate the fact that the teachers are far away and they can't access it and they miss their friends or they miss their sport, or there are young ones who don't understand why your meeting is that important and why they can't fly past you on Zoom right now whilst you're with your boss, and they just feel shut out when you shut the door. And none of us wanted to live this way. This wasn't what we planned. Or we feel the distance from extended family members who are vulnerable and alone and are tired and weary. And did I say tired? Because that tiredness thing is serious. I wonder how you're navigating this world right now. I want to give you permission, first of all. I want to give you permission in this moment to name those feelings, even if they don't feel glorious, even if they don't feel the woman that you used to be, like the woman you used to be. It's important that we acknowledge it, that we see where we're at. I don't know about you, whether you had great expectations as this time began. Did you think, right, we are going to become the best homeschooling cooperative the world has ever seen? No, I've never taught my kids at home before, but here I am. Or maybe you thought, I will cook meals that are simple and pure and glorious. Or maybe you thought you would write handwritten notes to people because you had time. You thought you'd have time. You'd read books, you'd catch up, you'd study more, you'd do all of those things. And now you're realizing that if you crash into your bed and just fall asleep, that's a win. That's a win. And then there are the unexpected feelings that some of us may feel. Maybe some of us have realized, because we've been forced to stop, quite how much we needed to. The unexpected feelings that maybe, I know for some, feel a guilt of that they are actually enjoying this space. And that's not to belittle anybody else's experience. It's just the reality of yours. It's a weird time for that, isn't it? It's a weird time for all of us. In that there are some unexpected feelings, there are definitely unknown experiences, there are this new unrelenting story that doesn't seem to end yet, that doesn't seem to have an end chapter yet, is reshaping our lives and our ways of being. in ways we didn't expect. I've been reading these studies on women who are working from home whilst taking care of their household, whether that household be people living in their house or whether roommates, whether it's that household is children, whether it's a relative they're caring for who's living with them, or a relative who they're caring for who's in another space. And they recognize that the growing overwhelm, one, because we have just added to our lives. We were already spent trying to make everything work before. One of the phrases a sociologist uses, a second shift, to describe all the domestic managing responsibilities that we have alongside our everyday lives. And they acknowledge that women were just doing more and more and more, that some of us, even in our couples, haven't really renegotiated what work looks like when we're all at home together. And so we are feeling the burden. Is that your story? Is that where you're at right now? Are you feeling the burden of another form, another bill, another thing, and you've just squeezed more into your life? And as I did more research on this, there was a conversation between a researcher and a podcast interviewer asking, so what's going to happen with women? Are they going to have, are you finding that they're having new conversations, or they're kind of asserting that they need more help? And she said, no, what we're seeing is that women are sleeping less and they're getting less help. And the impact is on their emotional and mental well-being. So I find it really important for us right now that we reflect and ask ourselves, as we navigate this space, how we are really doing, how our new normal is shaping up, and if it's a normal that, well, it's not a normal that any of us wanted. I don't see 2020 on our vision boards. Many of us may have set fire to our vision boards and our journals and our planners because none of them make sense anymore. But it's important to still ask how you are, and to reflect on how we're here now. We're in this moment now. So how do we learn to not just survive this moment, but grow in this moment, become more whole in this moment? How do we process the grief of this moment? Seize if there's any modicum of an opportunity we can find in this moment. How do we walk with God in this moment, in the middle of all these impossible things, in an unprecedented time where we have to pivot and live a new normal? I just had to get all the words out at once. I've been really comforted by the Psalms at this time. I've been really comforted by the Psalms. For me, this moment has meant the loss of income, the loss of opportunities, the loss of prayed up, well strategized, well planned dreams that were about to come true. This season has cost a visit to England, which was part work, but also meant I would have seen my mum, who is in her 80s now, and see my sister and my brother, and the plans we had to maybe go and see Hamilton or do something. We were just at the dream stage. We weren't at the economic, work it out how much it's going to cost stage, but it was fun, friends. It was fun. For me, it has meant coming to terms with a world that is so different to what I'd hoped for. Worrying about a brother and a new niece and a sister-in-law who live in the other side of the world in Hong Kong, and just beginning to say, okay, what do we do? So as I've turned to the Bible, I've found comfort in unexpected ways, comfort and reassurance and insight and perspective in unexpected ways that when we look at the journey of the people of God, so often it's in the face of the impossible. You know, when we talk about Esther and such a time as this, it sounds so inspirational, and I realize that's happening in the face of devastating circumstances. The fear overwhelming, pressure overwhelming, and then such a time as this. When Moses is about to rise up again, devastating circumstances. There's masses of uncertainty in the Bible with God walking with his people, masses of upheaval and lack of clarity and confusion in the daily circumstances of the world. And I suddenly realized this is exactly the space I need to go to, exactly the place I need to be. But the first place of comfort for me, as I have worked out how to explore, how to navigate these times, has actually been the Psalms, because the Psalms just span the gamut of the human condition, don't they? They show you the depth of what people are feeling and the honesty in their relationship with God. And so with that in mind, I want to read to you a few words from the Psalms and then just share a few thoughts on how you and I, together virtually, can learn to navigate this season, regardless of how long it lasts. and even though it's not all clear. So I'm going to read I was going to say 3 verses, but actually, friends, it's 4. I'm going to read 4 verses from Psalm 61, very familiar one. And it's a psalm written by David. And it's the point where, well, actually, we're not sure whether he's king at this point, but this is what he has to say in the arc of his life and his journey with God. Oh God, listen to my cry. Hear my prayer. From the ends of the earth, I cry to you for help. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the towering rock of safety. For you are my safe refuge, a fortress where my enemies cannot reach me. Let me live forever in your sanctuary, safe beneath the shelter of your wings. I think of the times I've sung that song, sung these words in various worship songs, and they've always been rather comforting. But now as I read it, I'm like, actually, he's quite desperate. These are quite challenging times. There's a crying out to God in these times, and that has helped and encouraged me. But as how it's helped me navigate, let me share a story, just a reflection of something that happened about a year or so ago. That these words have helped me get some insight into. About a year or so ago, I was in London, where I grew up and where my mum still lives. And it was her birthday. And so I thought, I'm going to be the greatest daughter ever. And I took her, me and my family, we took her to her favorite Chinese restaurant, not far from where we lived. Always a winner with my mum. Chinese restaurants, loves them. But she loves this one more than any other. So I felt particularly good as a daughter, taking her. Anywho, so we're driving around the neighborhood and everything has changed. It's been a few years. I've seen my mum pretty often, but I haven't actually been to our neighborhood every time I've seen her. So we were driving around the neighborhood and the entire landscape, I noticed a change. Where the grocery store used to be, the one I used to go to and buy donuts, well, now it's an embassy, and the roads didn't go where they used to. I kept on getting into dead ends and it was disorienting and frustrating and weird. And the places I wanted to point out to my children weren't there anymore. And then my favorite fish and chip shop, an English institution, was gone. Gone, I tell you. It was weird and it was unexpectedly disorienting. And I remember saying to my mum, what's gone on? Everything's changed. The map doesn't work. The landscape is different. And she laughed at me and she said, Jo, it's been changing for years. It's just that you didn't see it. But I come back to that moment, or that feeling of disorientation a lot right now, that the landscape has changed in our life. And what was familiar isn't there anymore. What used to be, what my day used to look like, isn't there anymore. How things used to function, the direction. There's no GPS for this. There's no roadmap for this. The things that I treasured and that I loved, or that I was just used to, aren't there anymore. Suddenly, aren't there anymore. And this psalm has been a comfort for a number of reasons. One, it's a heart cry. It's a heart cry of honesty to God. Doesn't matter whether he's a shepherd boy or a king, it's a heart cry. Oh Lord, oh God, listen to my cry. Hear my prayer from the ends of the earth, from everything within me. I cry out to you for help. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the towering rock of safety. Other translations, lead me to the rock. I want to pause for a moment, even just there. It says when my heart is overwhelmed. There's a number of words for heart, but here the word for heart in the Hebrew is lev, and it refers to not just your feelings, not just when your feelings are overwhelmed, but your will, your mind, your motives, the core, the desires, your hopes, your expectations, all that makes you you is overwhelmed. Sound familiar? And so one of the first things I think is really important for us as we navigate this journey together is there a sense of raw honesty with God? Are you having raw, honest, God, this is what it looks like? Or are we telling God how it's so much more important what somebody else is going through that we're not being honest about where we're at? Have you told God how it feels to be in your space right now? Have you told him that you need his help because you're scared about the next mortgage payment? Have you told him that you feel the losses, that you love your kids being at home, but you're nervous about whether you're seen as professional at work, or that you're lonely because you are single and you're living in this wonderful apartment, which was great provision, but now it just feels like the loneliest place on earth, because how do you meet people when you're not allowed to leave your house and go and be social? It's overwhelming, isn't it? So much of this time is overwhelming. And yet here we see in the Psalms a reminder, a model for us that we pour out our hearts to God. So my first thing I want to encourage us to do to navigate this time is, in whatever way we can, and there were definitely chapters in my life when I locked myself in the bathroom from little ones in order to pray. In any way we can, what does it mean to pour out your grief, your sorrow, your overwhelm, your uncertainty, your anger, your bewilderment, your I can't make sense of this landscape to God? And as the different new pieces of news come out, which continually gives our lives mid-course adjustments, what does it look like to say, God, I am overwhelmed? My heart, my mind, my thoughts, I'm not sleeping well, I'm not eating well, I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well. I cry out to you for help when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the towering rock of safety. I want to encourage each and every one of us that we would commit to making this place a time, this space in our lives, a time of raw, unapologetic honesty with God about how we're doing. That we don't suppress grief in the name of coping, and because we've got to take care of everybody else. But we acknowledge that sometimes, and I think it's the work of Kurt Thompson, author of The Soul of Shame, a great man and a great psychiatrist who notes that the thing with grief is that when grief comes up, it often brings the shards of other griefs in our life. You may find yourself overwhelmed, not because you're just grieving this moment, because of all the other griefs that are in your life right now. I want to encourage you, cry out to God. Cry out to God for help. But I also want to remind us here that there's a prayer here where it says, lead me to the towering rock of safety, for you're my safe refuge. And I want to encourage you to think through what your rocks of safety might be. We see that God is a rock of safety for the psalmist here. But when we look at the arc of the people of God going through overwhelm, when they're going through uncertain times, when they're dealing with pressure, their community is key. God in his very nature is relationship, Father, Son, and Spirit. Jesus, when he walks the earth to do his work, the first thing he does is he gathers his people around him. If they need it, so do we. So my question for you is, even in this dislocating, spatially distant time, how are you being relationally connected? Are there spaces where you can be honest? And it's hard, isn't it? Because I wonder if you've had enough of Zoom. But then maybe a phone call would be better. But who are you checking in with to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed? Who will you let be the hands and feet of Jesus in your life to say it's tough right now? Help me understand how I navigate grief with my children as they navigate their losses and they don't have the words. Right now, as you away from this time, you'll be back into everybody's life. In fact, let me pause and slow down while I say that. In fact, some of you may be bathing your babies while we do this. You are already taking care of everybody else. My word, my encouragement to you is that you have a moment to take care of you, and that you invite people to help you take care of you. That you build the kinds of relationships, or you lean into the relationships where you can be honest about it being hard and not feel like it's a competition, but feel like you have permission to ugly cry all over Zoom, ugly cry all over the phone, ugly cry as you text somebody, as you FaceTime, as you WhatsApp, whatever it is. But don't let this time accentuate the loneliness that has been enforced in our lives in this moment. I encourage you to think of your community in this time. It's really important as we move forward. And then my last thought, friends, as I think of these words, is actually a quote from somewhere else. And it's that we can't drink from an empty cup, and you can't pour out from an empty cup. I wonder how empty your cup is right now. What do you need to restore your well-being? Do you need sleep? Do you need it to eat a healthy meal? Do you need to stay hydrated? Well, we always need to stay hydrated. But what are the things that you need? Because as you're giving out, as you're making tough decisions at work, as you're making decisions for your family, as you're going back as an essential worker into that grocery store, into that hospital, into all those other places that maybe aren't recognized publicly, as you are helping your kids do school, as you are helping your classroom of kids do school, as you're trying to do all of these things, who's going to take care of what your body needs? We're recognizing, aren't we, that sometimes in this pressure, we've really got to show up right now. So take care of yourself right now. Get the sleep you need right now. Get the comfort you need right now. Look after your body right now. Talk to a counselor if you need to. Loads of them are working online right now. When your heart is overwhelmed, let God lead you to those towering rocks of safety, his presence, his people, and the processes you need for your healing and your well-being. I don't know when we get to see each other in person again. I don't know when we get to connect in person again, but I encourage you in this. When we cry out to him for help, he is listening. When we pour out our grief, he is listening. When we see that this is too much for us, he is listening. And his promise remains that when our heart is overwhelmed, he will lead us to a towering rock of safety because he is our safe refuge. May he be your safe refuge in grief. May he be your safe refuge through your community. And may you know his restoration as you pull away from the demands of the day, even for a moment, and take some deep breaths and know that God is for you. He won't forsake you. His hand on you is stronger than your hold on him. And he has no intention of letting you go. God bless you.